Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in?
Hej, mit navn det er Stig Ulrichsen, og welcome to my world. I denne uge har jeg fået besøg af Elvis Presleys tourproducer. Han vil fortælle os lidt omkring hans spændende liv. Ikke kun hans arbejde med Elvis, men i særdeleshed også hans arbejde med Elvis' manager, Colonel Tom Parker. Udover det, så har Charles Stone, som man hedder, også arbejdet med navne som Frank Sinatra og andre helt store. Og det skal vi snakke lidt om i det her program. Welcome to Denmark, Charles.
Thank you very much, Stig.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you didn't understand much of the introduction I just gave.
Well, you only made one tiny mistake, but yes, it was so fine.
And the rest of the interview, of course, has to go in English because your Danish is not that well, right?
No. No, we don't speak Danish in Texas.
You don't?
No.
So that's how life is. Charles, we are going to talk a little bit about your life today, and we are going to talk, of course, about your time with the Colonel and Elvis, because I guess those are the years that still stands as something special in your life.
Oh, absolutely. Because number one, when I went to work with the Elvis and the Colonel, I was an Elvis fan. So it was like, oh my goodness, you know, I mean, when you're a fan of somebody, then you get the opportunity to work with them. Life is good, you know. And there was only a handful of people in the entire world that got to work around the Elvis Presley show. And I was just blessed. I was at the right time at the right place. And I just happened to be very good at what I did. And the Colonel liked me, and I guess the word you might use is subcontracted to the Colonel for the last 6 and 7 years, you know, so that's all I did. And before that, I was doing the rock shows, but the Colonel took a liking to me, and that was it. I was on the road 200 days a year, still married to the same lady.
That's amazing.
It is.
But that's actually, your wife should have a medal for that, I think. Linda would.
I totally agree.
Have you been giving her a medal, you know, like your gift to people who have been faithful for so many years? You know,
No,
being
she
together.
deserves one, yeah.
Yeah. Because living with a man who's so much away must be very hard for a marriage.
Oh yeah, I mean it was hard, because you know you hear all the stories of the women or whatever, you know, but when you're out working, you don't even think about it because you're working all the time. But she, you know, we have a marriage based on trust, and it worked. You know, we were very loyal to each other. But you're right. I mean, all the wives deserved a medal for letting the husbands go and do that. You know, we were gone sometimes 30, 35 days at a time. And then in between tours, I had to go to either Vegas or Palm Springs and work with the Colonel, putting together another tour or whatever. So I was gone more than just the tours. Then I had to advance each city as we booked them.
And we have to talk a little bit about how you got into this work and things like that. But let's go a little bit behind the scene, as they would say sometimes. Because your childhood, did you grow up in Dallas, Texas, or where did you grow up?
No, I grew up in Wichita Falls, Texas. But I moved to Dallas after I got out. I did 2 years of college, then moved to Dallas.
How come?
Wichita Falls was not a great place. I mean, you know, I wanted to go to the big city, and that's what I did.
Because of the possibilities in the bigger city?
Oh yeah. I mean, Wichita Falls was 90,000 people. And you go to Dallas-Fort Worth, which is millions, and it's a whole different, like going to another country, like coming to Denmark.
Yeah.
So that's the reason.
And then you start studying when you grew older in the college. Did you have any childhood dreams back then for what you should be doing?
I wanted to be a lawyer, but after 2 years, I decided, I want to go have fun. That's what I moved to Dallas for, to have fun. And somehow my life evolved into the entertainment business, which was very, very good.
So before you start working with the Concert West, as it was called, what did you do before that? Did you come directly from school? Or?
I was working on the dock at Texas Instruments, which is a semiconductor company, and going to school at night, trying to get some more credits. And my next door neighbors were in a band, and they recorded a song that started getting national airplay. And I was making $90 a week. So back then, you could live on that. And one day they said, Charles, would you make a phone call for us and book 3 shows at such and such? So I dialed the number, said 5 Americans, such and such. Yeah, we'll take them, because their record was getting on the charts. and they paid me 10%, and they were getting $1,000 a night back then. So I made $300 in about 30 minutes, and I'm making $90 a week driving a forklift. Say, wait a minute, you know, this is a good deal. So I did that 2 or 3 times, but I wasn't going to quit my job just in case. So a national booking agency came to me that had, you know, Creedence Clearwater, Louis Armstrong. They represented all the big acts because they wanted to buy the 5 Americans, and he bought them from me. And he said, what else do you do? I said, that's it. He said, well, come visit with me. So I visited their office. He said, you want to be an agent for this company? Well, yeah, why? He said, I'd like it. I said, how much does it pay? He said, $90 a week. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do that because show business somehow just got a hold of me. So I quit TI and went to work and it's called Associated Booking Corporation.
Did you? What about your parents? Did they have anything to do with the entertainment industry and the entertainment business?
No, no. My father was a car salesman.
Okay. But it's almost the same, selling concerts and selling cars, you know.
Yeah, he didn't sell Elvis's Cadillacs, but you know. But so I went to work as an agent and booking Little Richard, Fats Domino, and got off. Really, I was having a good time. Still at $90 a week. So when Concerts West came to Texas to open an office, they automatically came to this agency and to the record company that my band worked for, and they both recommended me to show the guy Terry Bassett around. Fine. So my wife, Linda, and his wife, Lynn, the 4 of us went to every nightclub, everywhere there was entertainment going in Dallas-Fort Worth. And he said, we're going to open an office here. You want to go to work for me? I said, depends on how much it pays. Whoa, you know, 10 times more, $1,000 a week? Yeah. When do I start? And that's how I got to work with Concerts West.
And at that time, before you started at Concert West, did you have any contact with any of the artists you worked with? You named Little Richard and other names.
No,
you didn't. You just sold the
I was representing. I was booking them as an agent.
Yeah.
For maybe a year and a half, 2 years.
And the only thing you had was actually what mainly people had. They had heard the songs and knew a little bit about the artists, and that was enough for selling them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it hooked me real quick. I loved it, but. I'm still blessed because I had so many good experiences. I mean, Little Richard was hilarious. Fats Domino was good. I worked at Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, all of them in the old days. We even did a Jimi Hendrix show. We did a Janis Joplin show back then. We did them all. And that was, I look back now and say, man, I was so blessed to have just a small part of rock and roll history.
But just to get it totally right, you didn't go to. Did you go to the concert you booked, or
I did if they were in the Dallas area. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
But was the concerts all over the States, or was it in the beginning we talk about now, or was it mainly in the state you did these bookings?
Well, it was mainly in the southwest because they had offices in Chicago, New York, L.A., and Vegas. So my responsibility was just Texas, Louisiana. You know.
And when you booked them, just to get that correct also, was that to a local promoter who had the show from there, or was it like you booked in the arena and then you had the whole things going on this?
No, I was just the agent. All I did was sell the show.
Okay.
Some promoters, but mostly a lot of clubs. Because back then, the acts weren't as expensive as they are today. They could afford to work clubs.
So, and when you say clubs, because in Denmark a club is something very small, I guess a club in America, is that 200 seats?
Oh,
or?
some of them were 500 or 600, 700, yeah.
Okay.
The big ones, you know.
Yeah.
I remember one time with Little Richard, I booked him in a club in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Got good money. And when he came to Dallas the next day, and he said, don't ever book me there again, Charles. I said, why? He said, you know that between shows, they wouldn't let me sit in the club. They made me go sit out back. And they made me drink out of a paper cup. I said, you're kidding me. You sold out 2 shows. He said, they're still prejudiced and racially, it's not a good thing down there. And this guy, so I never booked. They wanted to book him again. I said, nope, he won't come.
Yeah. But it was another time back then also, right?
It was.
Things have, luckily enough, changed a lot since then.
I'm not going to name the artist, but I went to one of them in the South Dallas, which is all black part of town. So I'm in the box office, and this guy, he's getting paid a guarantee and a percentage, which you're well aware of. And I'm seeing over there, they got 2 sets of tickets. They'd sell 1, then they'd sell 2. They'd sell 1, then they'd sell 2. So I went back and I told the artist, I said, look, there's something wrong. They're selling 2 sets of tickets, and I think one of them is not yours. He said, I know that. I said, well, what do you want me to do? He said, nothing. He said, he's the only guy that'll hire me. I don't have a choice. Man, you know, that's not right, but that's the way it was back then.
Yeah, it's crazy. But let's go back to Concert West. They hire you and you start working there for much better salary. Is it still the same customers you work with? Is it still the same artists?
No. Concert West was the promoter. We were the promotion then.
Then you start actually to rent the venues
And buy the acts and put the shows on ourselves.
Which was a different ball game for you actually compared to what you've been doing.
Totally.
Did you like this change? Did you
I loved it because as an agent, you're under pressure to sell, right? How much you booked this week? Only 2. Well, you got, you know. So with Concerts West, we were the purchasers, and we bought tours at a time. I mean, we'd buy 8, 9, 10, 12 dates at a time, or the whole national tour. So we never lacked for a show to promote. So that was the good thing about that we were busy all the time.
Yeah. And you continued working for Concert West, and you did also shows with Frank Sinatra, right, for them?
We did Sinatra's. I only did a few of Sinatra because I just started with him when I got the call to go to work with Elvis. But before that, Led Zeppelin, Chicago, Grand Funk Railroad, all the rock acts.
Did you meet all those acts in the time in Concert West?
Yeah.
You went to the venues also. Now you're the promoter yourself, or?
Yeah. We had to pay them. We had to pay them, but they had the road manager. But. Back then, the acts were not like they were today. Today, they come in, they leave. But if you do most of their shows when they understand that you are the bread and butter, they're much nicer to you.
And when you came out on the venues back then, Led Zeppelin and others, did you have time to talk with them when you were? Did you go backstage talking with them for a little time? And
sometimes, it depends on who it was. The group Chicago was very nice. Grand Funk we got to know. Then some of them, if I'm busy, I didn't have to, because don't forget I was producing the show, so I have to do all the work there, as you well know when you're a promoter. But after a while, and sometimes you travel with them on the same plane to the next show, because a lot of them didn't rent planes; they flew commercial. I'll never forget one night we were going out with Leonard Skinner, and we took a red eye, which is like a midnight plane somewhere out of Tulsa, and one of the guys didn't have a ticket, but he got on and flew. They kept doing head counts, and finally the pilot said, "Screw it, we got to go," and we went. But one of the guys in the band didn't have a ticket, but he somehow got on. Wouldn't happen today, though.
No, there's too much security today regarding those things. But working for Concert West brought you to a call from the Colonel needing somebody to do something. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Correct. The story goes, I was in Providence, Rhode Island with Sinatra, and I get the call backstage to go to Alabama to put a show together for Elvis. We got the Weintraub, we got the tours, and I was the only one in my company that had been to this city. There was no box office staff. Everything was do-it-yourself. I hired bank tellers and people to run the box office when I did the rock shows there. Okay, so I flew down there the next day. I hired everybody and put tickets on the day after that. So I was basically there 2 days. And don't forget, there's no computer. You're selling tickets one at a time. But we had a 10-ticket limit for people. And it took, 6, 7 hours to sell out 10,000 seats. I had a phone number to call when I sold out. So I called this number. And don't forget, there's still no cell phones. So if you got to have a landline somewhere. So I called this number. Somebody answers, and I said, "May I speak to Tom Hewlett or Jerry Weintraub?" "Who's calling?" I said, "This is Charles Stone." He said, Are you in Alabama?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, this is a colonel." I locked up. I never expected to be talking to Colonel Parker because in our industry, he's a legend.
Was he already back then a legend?
Oh, yeah, in our industry, absolutely. And so I just locked up. I said, "Yes, sir." I called him sir right off the bat. He said, "Are you in the box office, Mr. Stone?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I want you to open every drawer and see if there's any tickets left." I said, "Colonel, I have balanced my money against my manifest. There aren't any." "Mr. Stone." Oh, Yes, sir. So I put the phone down on the counter and opened and shut the same drawer 6 times. No, sir, there are no tickets left. And you've done a good job. I need you to come to California. I said, well, I'm supposed to go back with the Sinatra tour, Colonel. He said, well, just a moment. And Jerry Weintraub gets on the phone and says, come on here, Charlie, and I'll send somebody else to the tour. Okay. Well, I fly to California that night. I get in. The next morning, I go to MGM Studios. This is where he had a sound stage at his office. Well, first of all, don't forget, I'm in my 20s.
What year are we in? 71? 71?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm a kid. Well, I pull up to the gate of MGM Studios. This is where they're making movies now. And this guard looks at me, and don't forget, I've got mustache, long hair, look like a hippie. And I said, Charles Stone to see Colonel Parker. He goes, oh, okay. You're just going through. I said, well, I don't know where I'm going. Oh, let me draw you a map. So I go, as I'm driving between these buildings, there's people in costumes pushing cameras and lights just like you see. I'm thinking, man, is this cool? I'm thinking, I'm going to have fun here. So I get back to his office, I park, I go in, and they say, have a seat in the foyer by where the secretary's desk was. He had a male secretary named Jim O'Brien. So I sit there all day. They ordered lunch in. Fortunately, they got me a sandwich. Nobody spoke to me all day. Jim O'Brien, if I talked to him, he would answer, but he wouldn't volunteer. I'm sure he didn't know who I was or what I was there for. I'm sitting, I could hear everybody over the cubicles talking. Tom Hewlett and the Colonel, and I'm thinking, well, what am I here for? But I was told to sit there. I sat there all day. And at the end of the day, they come out and said, we're going to go have dinner tonight. You're going to join us. And I said, okay. What am I supposed to do? So we go to Trader Vic's in Beverly Hills. Some of the RCA executives and the Colonel's staff, Tom Hewlett and me. Well, I'm sitting about the middle of the table. Colonel's at the left hand on the head of the table at the end. And everybody orders, and the food comes. And Tom Hewlett, I was about to take a bite. He said, don't eat anything. So I'm thinking there's going to be a prayer, right? Next thing I see is a plate being passed around, and everybody's taking something off their plate and putting on that plate. It comes around to me, and Tom says, it doesn't matter, anything. So I had a plantain banana, and I put it on there and went and stopped in front of the Colonel. Then everybody could eat. That was the Colonel's plate.
He didn't want to buy anything himself?
Well, I guess not. So after dinner, the waiter comes with the check. And obviously he goes to at the head of the table to the Colonel. And he was going to give the Colonel a check. And the Colonel says, don't give that to me. I didn't order anything. I almost fell out of my seat. I mean, I'm thinking, did I just hear what he said? Oh, my God, that was priceless. But then the next morning, we go back out to the studio again, and they call me in. And he said, then we're going to book a tour starting with New York, somewhere up there. And said, you want to book it? I said, sure. So this is what I did, this is what I did. So took me, I don't know, maybe an hour, had a whole tour put together. And the Colonel was shocked.
Before you continue, I just have to get one thing straight for the viewers also and for me. The Colonel said, I don't want to pay. Did you have to pay each of you then, or was it somebody from...
No, the guy from RCA picked up the check. But I didn't order anything.
And another funny thing I just have to get straight out, because you told me about this MGM that he had a studio. That's one thing that's the Colonel is very famous for, is that he never paid rent anywhere. Nope. He always made sure that if it was Hilton, they had to have an office for him. MGM had to have an office, and so on. So he didn't have to pay anything.
That's correct.
And I remember another thing about the Colonel, before we continue, remember the story about that, when he had this country singer before Elvis, he was the manager for, what was his name?
Eddie Arnold.
Eddie Arnold, yeah. Eddie Arnold was buying himself a new house with his wife, and Colonel was out there looking at it and said, well, this room, you don't need that for anything, do you? I said, no, not anymore. You know what, Marie and I can move in there because then I can be close to my artist. And then he moved in there, and started taking control over the house. Eddie Arnold wrote in his book, I remember.
But that was the Colonel, Well, actually, his home in Palm Springs was owned by the William Morris office. And the Cadillac that he drove, his car, was owned by the Hilton.
It's an amazing way of living, right?
Hey, if you can get away with it, why not,
Yeah, but back to your story, Charles. It was just a little bit interruption here.
That's okay. So anyway, I had a tour put together in an hour and a half, whatever it took me. It wasn't long, because this is what I do. And the Colonel, wow, okay, how big are those arenas? And I started telling him, don't forget, I'd been to most of them anyway with rock acts, so I knew 10,000, 12,000, 3. Wow, you know, okay, all right. So after that, that's all I did was Elvis for like almost a little less than 7 years.
And then you start having much more to do with the Colonel, I guess. How was it meeting the Colonel again, and what was your first impression of the Colonel?
My first impression was at Trader Vic's. It was priceless. But once I got to know him, I said, you know, this guy's he's a genius at what he does. He knew what he was doing. There's, you know, all the stories you hear about Elvis and the Colonel and this, they're not true. As a matter of fact, Greg McDonald, who was Ricky Nelson's manager, just got the Colonel's papers. In the papers, in the early days, Elvis's money all went to his account. He wrote the Colonel his commission check. The Colonel never touched Elvis's money. A lot of people say, you know, how he screwed Elvis out of this. Not true. He never touched Elvis's money. And in the end, when we were doing the shows, we would give send the Colonel his money and send Elvis his money so that it's never commingled. So it was always Elvis's money and Colonel's money was separate of his commission, and so the Colonel never touched Elvis's money.
According to some of the books I've been reading, is that this could be correct, as you say, from the papers. But another thing, Colonel, was he was a businessman, so if he could see somebody was a little bit weak, then he took advantage of it, you know, making sure, you know, he made this with the merchandise things, you know, where he made merchandise in Elvis' name. What was Boxcar? What's called
Boxcar, yeah.
Boxcar, yeah. And then Elvis got, I can't remember the exact percentage, maybe 25%. Colonel got 40%. Tom Hewitt got some percentage of it. Where many Elvis fans would say, "Oh, but it was Elvis' name. He should have had 50% like that." But where the Colonel actually say, "Well, the only thing he has to do is actually put in his name for it, and he gets some money for that. We others take care of the work."
No, actually. Conscious West and nobody else got any piece of the merchandise. It was strictly the Colonel and Elvis, and Aldebaran, of course. And I would strike a merchandise deal with the venues when I booked the arena, so that it's a flat fee. Normally, as you know, it's 15 or 20% commission, but we wouldn't pay it because we didn't have to, because they wanted Elvis in the building. But Elvis never put one penny into having the merchandise printed and made, but he got half the profits.
So he got half the
Yes, he
profit
did.
on it. Okay, so it's not true what you've been, what I've been reading in some.
No, he got half the profits, and the Colonel did all the front money, did all the selling and everything. So Elvis did quite well for not having to do anything, you know, because it was sold at the venues.
And another fact is that Elvis, he was satisfied, of course. In a marriage like that, if you can call it that, you know, they were so together for so many years. Of course, there was ups and downs, and there were things that he did not agree on. But in the end, Elvis was actually getting his money paid. He got the shows done. The Colonel took care of his career. You know, he could just go on, not just go on stage, doing his songs, doing his shows, go back to the car and continue. All the other things was something that was taken care of.
And Elvis himself only worked 1 hour a night.
Yeah.
He didn't work 59 minutes. He didn't work 61 minutes. He worked 60. Somehow he had a clock up in his head to know exactly, because he had a song list, of course. And, you know, if he chattered too much between songs, he might cut one just to make it work. But he knew when an hour was up.
Yeah. And regarding the Colonel, was he ever showing up for the concerts himself? What I heard is that he actually was always one day ahead of Elvis.
Correct. Now sometimes he would be there. I know that one time in Huntsville, Alabama, the Colonel, we thought he had left. And Tom Hewlett and I are sitting in front of the stage while they're hanging the sound and getting ready, and we hear hollering in the back, "Get your hands off of me!" So, oh, I sound like the Colonel. So I run back to the back door, and this guard's got the Colonel in a bear hug. I say, "Let him go. You told me nobody gets in." I said, "Yeah, but he can. That's the Colonel." We thought he would have already gone to the next city. He was so mad. His face was so red. And he came back, and that was, I think, the first day of a tour. And he didn't look. He looked at me. He was looking for Tom Diskin. Mr. Diskin, he got him over and started chewing him out. And the thing is, you know, I gave the orders of nobody not in, not Mr. Diskin, but he went to him and he didn't chew me out. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but at the end of the day, we gave the guard those instructions because nobody was supposed to come in.
He should have been happy the security worked.
Yeah.
He should have been happy the security
Well, he was not happy. Well, he was not happy.
He should have had a backstage pass like everybody else.
Because as you've heard, he didn't like to be touched.
Yeah.
Boy, if a waitress ever touched him, he'd move his shoulder.
He hated it.
First time my wife met him, it was in Las Vegas, as a matter of fact. She ran up to him, giving him a hug, and I said, "Oh my God, no, no!" And boy, he backed up like that, you know, and didn't know, you know. I said, "Oh God, I guess I'm fired." But after a day or two, and she was there, he liked her, and then after that, he wanted his hugs from her. But boy, at the first time, no, he didn't like anybody to touch him.
No, he was very special in that way. He always also needed some time before he could let people in, right?
Yeah.
He liked to check out people first before he started getting a little bit closer to them, because he always kept people on a distance.
Well, yeah, you know how many people tried to get to Elvis by way through the Colonel?
Yeah.
I mean, I sat there and witnessed it. It was ridiculous how much, and he's got to be able to trust you first.
Yeah. Do you know anything about why he didn't like people to touch him?
No, I don't know that. But I know one thing. If a waitress touched him, he'd move his shoulder back, and then we'd have to tell her, don't, you know. Yeah. And also, he had food. The Colonel was food driven.
Food driven.
And don't put ice in his water, because he brought his own water, Ramalosa or Mountain Valley. And if you bring soup, make it boiling. Don't bring it hot, because they'll be sending it back. So anytime he'd order soup, one of us would go catch the waitress and say, boil it, bring it boiling. Don't bring it just hot, you know.
So he was very, can you say he was scared for that the food should be prepared correctly, or?
That's just the way he liked it, you know, and he had no problem sending it back if he didn't like it the first time. But he was a good man. I tell you what, he was a smart man. And he had a big heart, even though everybody thinks he was just hard-nosed, whatever. He was a softie inside. One time we drove from Palm Springs to L.A. with my family, and he sang and made nursery rhymes to my kids all the way. And, you know, that's just, the Colonel was in Las Vegas, he would tip all the staff all the time. So he took care of people.
And he didn't get anybody else to pay it like he did with the food, you know.
No.
and he actually also, which what many people don't remember and don't know, is that he loved children. And he also, I think, was very good to Marie's son. She had a son when she met him.
Bobby Ross.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was in a wheelchair. He was paraplegic. Colonel was good to everybody. I mean, he was just as generous as Elvis, but he did his. Nobody really knew how he would. Now, he didn't buy cars and homes, but he would help people out. But I learned. I mean, he was my mentor. I learned a lot from him. If the Colonel ever told you he was going to do this, you don't need a contract. It's a done deal.
Another thing that I've heard about the Colonel is that if he liked people, he was willing to help you all the way. But if he did not like people, they absolutely knew that he did not like them.
Correct.
Is that true?
That's correct. That's very correct.
He didn't keep anything down or back. He didn't care about if people knew that he did not like them.
Oh, he told it like it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he helped a lot of people. Even after Elvis's death, he was helping people. I remember I got a phone call from him. He said, "Charlie, I want you to call Shreveport and put a hold on the Hearst Coliseum for me." He said, "Well, you and I are going to do a show." I said, "Who is it?" He said, "I can't tell you." Yeah, whatever, you know. So I called and put a hold on the building. So he called back about 3 days later and said, "You didn't release the hold. We're not going to do the show." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, they got a whole tour. One person bought all the dates." I said, "Well, who's this act?" "What's a new act I'm helping called Celine Dion." He helped get her career started. He and Renee, her husband, you know. So the Colonel has got a lot of credit out there he doesn't get credit for.
He also liked the practical jokes. As far as I've been reading in some books, I remember a story about him sitting on the toilet, having a meeting with some of the top guys from RCA just to put up a joke with them. Do you remember anything
I
about
don't know
that
that one. I haven't heard
You
that
don't know
one.
about that one? He put it all up like he had his office in the toilet, so they had to, while he was sitting in the toilet, they had to stay outside the toilet door making the meeting with him, And I think it was because they had been doing something he didn't like when he met them before, so he just put up the whole office for him sitting in
that's
the
funny.
toilet and
I
they
can
to
see
stay
him
out there
doing
doing it,
Now, I was with him when the Japanese came to the to MGM to hire Elvis. Well, the Colonel knew Elvis couldn't go over there, so he said, "Charlie, sit behind me." I said, "Okay." And they had two Japanese gentlemen with an interpreter. Well, they came, and I think it was me, Tom Hewlett, and George Parkhill. I think that's all was in there in the Japanese fans. And the interpreter said they want to hire Elvis to do a show in Tokyo, and we bringing you $1 million cashier's check. He had put the check on the table. So it was $1 million check. So the Colonel took his hat, put it over the check, and moved it over here. And boy, these Japanese gentlemen were really happy. They thought they had a deal. So the Colonel said, "Okay, now that you've taken care of the Colonel, what are you going to pay Elvis?" But that was his way. That he knew Elvis couldn't do it. And that was his way of saying no, without offending him. They shocked them. They thought they had a deal in $1 million. But now that you've got the Colonel, what are you going to pay Elvis? That was priceless.
But that's one of the things that people might know about Colonel, that he liked to do these special things like taking a napkin and making a contract in Las Vegas, just instead of saying, "Oh, I have my secretary making something tomorrow," He just took it out, said, "Okay, we sign a contract on that, 1 million,"
He was a very simple man. He didn't care about having big houses and Cadillacs and stuff like that. He was just a very simple man. But he did like, it's not showing off, but just doing things to get people,
But he was this carnival guy also, He loved being in these carnivals, that word for it, carnivals, when he was traveling around. He liked that kind of people. He liked that they had things simple. You gave a handshake, then it was a done deal, And he didn't want to make difference on people, because what I've been reading in some books is that some of the high men from RCA or others, they had to sit and wait while he was making business with a carnival guy about some balloons he needed for some kind of things. He didn't make a difference. That guy who sold the balloons was just as important as the guy who was signing the big contracts.
Exactly. He never demeaned anybody. Because he came from humble beginnings as well. But he made good deals for Elvis. He loved Elvis. All the people say, he did this. He didn't. He loved Elvis. As a matter of fact, he made such good deals for Elvis. We were in Lake Tahoe one day and about to go to lunch, and NBC TV, this is back when they only had the 3 networks, called, and they had a cancellation the next week for a primetime special, and said, "We need to book," I don't remember what movie Elvis did 10 years ago, but he said, "We need to run a movie, blah, 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 we need next week and 1 rerun." The Colonel said, "Okay, we can do that for $750,000. I said, "Okay, done deal." So before Elvis woke up that day, he made $750,000 for something he did 10 years ago. That's a good manager.
That's a very good manager. But the fact is also that very often some of these famous managers, the Beatles, Brian Epstein, who actually did very well for the Beatles, he got criticized afterwards for having done some bad deals. But the fact is just that it's much easier 10 years after or 20 years after to look at things and say, "Oh, but today people have got that, they should have got that also." But back then, Elvis was the first of a kind. Nobody have ever done what Elvis did.
No.
So nobody knew where is the limits, what is possible. And the same with the Beatles, they also have to feel the way and say, what is possible for us? How much can we do it? Because back then, they didn't have the idea that they should be the biggest band in the world that everybody will be looking up to, because they was in the middle of it, and they were taking one day at a time. And I guess it must have been the same with Elvis.
Well, if you remember, when Elvis started doing the movies, there was not a movie soundtrack by the star in the movie ever until Elvis did it. And the Colonel said, "Well, I'll just record it and make a record." So all of a sudden, soundtracks to movies became popular thanks to Elvis Presley. And when he signed to RCA, if you were back those days, the A&R director told the artist what they were going to sing. The artist didn't have a choice. In Elvis's deal, Elvis had complete control over what he was going to sing, so they couldn't make Elvis sing a song. They sang what Elvis wanted to sing. Once again, Colonel made that deal.
And another thing is that it was not because the movie industry was waiting to get Elvis back then when he did Love Me Tender, as far as I've been reading. It was actually Colonel who used his connections to get Elvis into the movie industry, and because he knew Elvis would love to make movies.
Right.
And he didn't get much money for the first one, but Colonel made a saying that, okay, we do this one for this amount, and the next one has to cost this, and the third one has to cost this, and then we make a new agreement for Elvis if he wants to make more movies. And then Elvis started earning so much money that nobody could ever imagine.
He was the
on his
highest paid
movies.
movie star at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was Colonel using his connection that he had back then when he had Eddie Arnold and
Right.
things like that to get Elvis into the movie industry.
A lot of people say, well, Elvis wanted to do a serious movie role. Whether he did or whether he didn't, I can't say yes or no. But I can say this. Colonel Parker and I went to Hal Wallace's house for dinner one evening. Hal Wallace being the movie producer that did most of his movies. And just the four of us, Hal Wallace, his wife, and me and the Colonel. And don't forget, I'm still in my 20s. So that's what's important here. I'm still a kid. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go for it. I said, Mr. Wallace, may I ask a question? And I can see the Colonel buckle up a little bit, you know. I said, the rumor has it that Elvis wanted to do a serious role. How come he never did? And he said, that's an easy answer, Charles. No studio would ever finance it. Oh. He said, why would they take the greatest singer in the world, put him in a movie and not let him sing? Answered that. Nobody would finance. No studio would have done it.
No. And another thing is actually that I don't know if you know, but I do lectures about John Lennon and the Beatles. And from what I've been heard and reading or told by some of the people around Beatles is that when they were together with Elvis and the Colonel back then in, was it 64 or 65, I think it was, when they were meeting him in Bel Air, actually one of the guys asked Elvis why he don't make more serious movies. And Elvis was actually laughing and blinking to Colonel and said, well, we tried that, right, Colonel? And then they said, yeah, we tried with Flaming Star, and there's no reason to try that again because that was the worst income we ever had, you know. So in that way, actually, Elvis was also aware of it, that if he did not do the songs, then the movie was not going as well.
Correct.
No, and not bringing in the cash
That's
again.
true.
And that's according to the Beatles kind of angle to it, because Paul McCartney or John Lennon, whoever it was, were asking that question back then, you know. And then they were already aware of it back then, that it was much easier just doing the other movies they could do in 4 weeks or in 6 weeks, you know, and get much more better paid, because that was what the fans wanted.
That's correct.
Give people what they want. But another thing about the Colonel is actually that that he always was the one that said, okay, we don't need to have more than this amount for a ticket for Elvis shows, because it should be so everybody can afford going into
That's
see
correct.
the show.
We tried so many times. Well, actually, we started out at $12.50 was the high ticket. We finally got him up to $15, $2.50 increase all the way. And you're right, they didn't want him. I mean, we were getting $20 and $22.50 for Led Zeppelin and all the other rock acts. And we tried so many times, but nope, they wanted everybody to be able to afford to see the show. You got to respect that, you know.
And another thing with the Colonel, just to take his good sides now, I'm talking with you who work so much with him, is also something I think you told me before also, is that if he had a show where there was some back rows where they could only see the back of Elvis, he would make sure that people who was blind, you know, they had a possibility to come to the concert. And even though if Colonel wanted somebody to go into the show with him, then he had to pay for the tickets.
Correct. I had to pay for my wife.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there were no, and Elvis, if Elvis gave you a ticket and said, be my guest at the show, he paid for it. The first day of every tour, I would give Joe Esposito 10 tickets to every show of that tour. And he would give me a check signed by Elvis for those tickets.
Who had those signed checks? It would be wonderful to have today.
Oh, man, I have to tell you a story. In Indianapolis, Indiana, the last show we ever did, they came in and Joe said, you got any money? I said, why? So Elvis would like to have some money. I said, I've got $536. She said, well, we'll take $500. Elvis wrote me a check for $500. I gave him that. Well, the last night of the show, I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm not flying on the Lisa Marie to Memphis. I'm going commercial to Dallas. I don't know how much a cab is. So I took that check to the box office and cashed it. I'm still kicking my butt on that one. It could have been the last check that he ever wrote. Who knows, you know? But I'm thinking, why did I do it? But I wasn't sure I had enough money for a cab.
But let's go a little bit back to your work with the Colonel. You start working more and more with him. You start getting more and more close to him. And what was the work you did exactly? Because one thing was you took care of the venue and things like that. When Elvis arrived to the venue, it was you meeting him. Can you tell a little bit about first time you meet Elvis?
Oh, okay. I was told not to speak to Elvis. However, my job was to meet him at the back door when he comes in and usher him to the dressing room. Okay, don't talk to him. Well, I guess there's a reason. Maybe Elvis doesn't want to be talked to. I don't know. So I'd meet him, and we'd be walking, and Elvis would be beside me, and I'd have to look around him or behind him to whoever, Joe, Dick, Sonny, whomever, and say, we'll go down here and turn left or right or whatever. And so after about maybe, I don't know, a week, 10 days, we're down this long hallway going to the dressing room, and Elvis grabs my arm and stops me. He says, who are you? I said, I'm Charles Stone. I work for Mr. Weintraub and Mr. Hewlett. He said, I'm Elvis Presley. As if you don't know, it's Elvis Presley. And after that, we became friends. You know, we could speak. But and I asked Joe one time, I said, why was it? He said, I don't know. Nobody in our camp told you not to speak to him. I guess Tom didn't think you'd say the right thing. I don't know.
So one thing was that you picked up Elvis at the car when he arrived, brought him into the dressing room. Was it the bodyguards who took him the last part of the way to the stage when he went on stage?
Right.
And what about when he was finished? Did you also were with him there, or was it just his bodyguards?
He went straight out in the police car or whatever. Then we all got on the bus and went to the airplane. Then I'd fly that night with him to the next town.
Were you flying with him in his plane, or did you fly in another plane?
No, his
with
plane.
Him? His plane. So everybody flew in his plane?
Not everybody, but his crew and Tom Hewlett and I.
Okay.
Because we had to meet with the Colonel the next morning for breakfast and go over the night before.
So you and Hewlett was in a bus and driving to the airport, because I can imagine Elvis didn't want to sit and wait for you guys to show up, right?
Well, no, he had to get out. You know, we had a police car waiting for him.
Yeah.
So he'd get in the back, and they would, or a limo or whatever it was, and they head straight to the airport. And then all the rest of the guys, you know, his crew, Lamar or whom, Sonny, we'd get in the bus and go. And
so he was waiting for you in the airport, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I guess it was straight to the airport, not going to any hotel.
Correct.
But when he arrived to a new town, I guess he checked into a hotel, stayed there for a little while before he went to the venues.
Yeah. Now, if in fact he stayed in that town the night after the show for whatever reason, I would have to fly with the show plane the next morning, because he wouldn't come until the evening, and I'd have to be there at 10 o'clock in the morning to set up the building, so I'd have to go with the show. So depending on the circumstances, I flew on both of them, but of what time, who gets there first, that's what I had to be.
When you were flying in the same plane like Elvis, did he ever spend time with the guys, or did he go to his own place just to relax because he had this show?
He went to his own place, and that was it, yeah. A couple of times he would come up, go in the cockpit, but not near me.
Okay, he went to the cockpit to...
Mm-hmm. Well,
do what?
We were going to land in Pittsburgh on New Year's Eve, and the pilot came on, Derwin came on and said, we're going to have to land, so everybody buckle your seatbelts, there's going to be some ice on the runway. Well, I thought you weren't supposed to land on ice. He said, so I can't really use the thruster, the brakes, I'm going to have to use the engines to slow down. So I'm thinking, damn, you know, here comes Elvis flying up to the cockpit and sits in the jump seat. He wants to see him land. And we're all thinking, well, the safest place in this airplane is at the back where his bedroom is, and he's up in the front if there's a problem. But
he didn't think much about safety in that case.
You know, he didn't care, no.
What was your impression of Elvis? Now I know you have to say all the nice things because a lot of Elvis fans will be watching, but how was Elvis? How was it to be close to Elvis? How was he as a person when you traveled in the planes and saw him a little bit?
Well, you know what, and that's a funny thing that you say that, is that I knew two Elvises. The one you work with And the one I used to idolize, which I still idolize, because I grew up with Elvis as being, you know, looking at his idol. But even working with him, you still can't get that idol out of your head. This is Elvis Presley. Even though you're with him every day, this is Elvis. When you mention his name, when you get in something, there are no rules. What can I do for you? If I called up a venue and said, of course, everybody wants to begin, they knew if I called what it was for. They would move a hockey game, they would move a basketball game in order to accommodate Elvis. Now, that wouldn't happen today, but his name, so therefore, even when you're working with him, he's still Elvis Presley. Now, if I wasn't a fan when I grew up with him, might have been different, but I was. So it was never just a normal guy to me, which all these other guys can say what they want to say. This is Elvis. Elvis is up here and everybody else is down here.
Yeah, and you had some kind of respect for him also, I can imagine. You were a young man, he was this big star, so even though you were in the same plane like him, if he came by, you'd still have this big respect, you know, like, I say, how are you doing, mate? You know, it's great to see you.
Absolutely, you respected him. He treated me and my family so nice. I have no qualms about that. I'll go to bat for Elvis any day of the year, and the Colonel. But Elvis was he was just a nice person. When Lisa Marie was being built, it had it built in Fort Worth, I get a call one Sunday morning from Sonny West. He said, Elvis wants to come see the plane. I said, good. You want us to meet you over there and have the architect there? He said, yeah, if you'll do that. I said, okay. He said, but you have to send us a jet to pick us up. I said, Sonny, I can't do that, man. You know, without the Colonel's knowledge and Tom Hewlett's, I can't do that. Well, Elvis said, since you live there, you'd be able to do it. I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, don't put me on the spot like that. I said, so let me understand this, Sonny. I'm going to call up a charter service. Tell them to have 2 pilots and a Learjet fly to Memphis to pick up Elvis Presley, COD, collect on delivery. And he'll pay them when they get there. He said, yeah. I said, are you kidding me? That's not going to happen. So I happened to call a charter service we had used in the past, and I told them, I said, okay, we'll do it, because they knew us, you know. I'm thinking if they weren't in Dallas and we hadn't used them, that would never, nobody's going to buy that story.
No, they would say he's crazy, you know.
Yeah, so they picked him up, and I met him, my wife and I met, it was Sonny, Linda Thompson, and Elvis, just the 3 of them, my wife, Linda, and me. That was it. And the guy that was designing the airplane. So Elvis comes, and it's in August or July when it's 95, 100 degrees. More than that on the tarmac of the airport. Well, here comes Elvis, dressed Elvis, long sleeve. You know, he never wore short sleeve shirts. And we're out there in short sleeve, and I think I might have even had shorts on, I'm not sure. And I went in the plane, we all went in the plane with him, and it was so hot in there. We stayed 2 minutes. And it was just wires and aluminum. It wasn't even a piece of furniture in it. And we go back out, and we're standing in the hangar, and it's just miserably hot. We are sweating and everything. He's in there for maybe 25 minutes. He comes out, and of course, he's dripping wet, but he's happy as a kid in a candy store, seeing where this is going to be, where that's going to be. He loved it. He was happy. Got in the plane, went back to Memphis.
That's amazing. But another thing is also, he never, actually, if you see him from his last holiday in Hawaii, everybody's sitting with no shirt on or short pants, you know, and Elvis is dressed in long pants and long sleeve and everything, you know. It's funny he always walked around like that, you know.
Yeah, here's 100 degrees, he's long sleeve shirt.
Yeah. But anyway, he grew up in the South, he's used to the heat, probably, you know. So he maybe felt more comfortable that way. That was a good story, Charles. Do you have any other good memories from your time with Elvis?
Oh, I have, all of my memories with him are good. The time in Fort Worth, Texas, Joe comes out and says, Elvis wants you bring your family back. I said, what for? He said, he wants a photo with your family. I said, you're kidding me. I never asked for that. So I get my wife and my little 4-year-old daughter. We go back to the dressing room. Now keep in mind, this dressing room is something like you see in a high school gymnasium. It's just tile, real sterile. There's no carpeting, no fancy chairs, just a folding chair and a table. So we go in, and he tries to take my daughter from my wife. she having nothing to do with it. And he keeps trying to take them. She not. And I said, you know, Elvis, don't worry. He said, we'll do it another time or something. He said, let me try. He keeps trying it. We were in there for maybe 3-4 minutes max, and it felt like 10. And she was not going to do it. So we agreed to do it at a later date. So we go out the door, and my wife says, how come you wouldn't let Elvis get a photo with you, take you for a picture? Well, I wasn't going to let that man in that funny costume in that big bathroom hold me. She thought it was a big bathroom.
Yeah.
And to this day, she remembers that. I said, well, darling, you're the only woman walking the face of this earth that refused a photo with Elvis Presley.
And actually, you know, from children you hear the truth sometimes. You know, it's he sees things as it is. She sees this is a boring place, bathroom, you know, and then he's standing there. He's in her eyes, funny costume.
In a Halloween costume,
yeah,
right?
You know, who the heck is dressed like that? You know,
because that was the first concert we took her to. That's because so she never saw him before.
Yeah. What year was it? Do you remember that?
No, I don't. But
because he was, you know, nobody else could get away with getting dressed the way Elvis was. We will look like fools if we dressed up like that, you know. But he could wear it, you know.
Liberace did. That's about it.
That's true.
Which is, I think, where he got some of his ideas.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but again, it's when I think and see back, it's funny when it's strange when you see Elvis sometimes go to the car salesman in his costume that he normally use on stage or things like that. You think, why the fuck? Oh, sorry, take it again. Why the heck did he dress up in that? But it was just his normal suit, you know. And he always, because he was used to it when he was a kid, to wear clothes that was not looking that good. He just felt that now I can afford it. I want to look like a king when I walk around.
I can look like anything I want to look at. Yeah. I saw some old photos recently. He dressed different when he was in high school, so he's always been a little different dress.
Yeah.
But
and he liked the costumes from the movies also, because sometimes you can see he didn't change the costumes when he did a movie and he went home to his house. He still was wearing the costume he used when he was doing a movie. Yeah.
And even before Elvis passed, you know, Wayne Newton took up the jumpsuits in Vegas. He started dressing like Elvis. So.
Okay. When Elvis was at the venue, when he went on stage, what did you do? You know, you had meet him, walk with him.
Once he's in the dressing room, I'm out front getting security set.
So you were out there also as a part of the security, making sure nobody jumped on stage?
All the security in that whole venue was my responsibility. And the reason we had policemen in front of the stage facing away is because, once again, Elvis and Colonel with their fans didn't want people mobbing the stage where the people sitting on the front few rows couldn't see. Because all the stages are, you know, 4 and 5 feet high. That was the reason. We put policemen in the aisles so they couldn't come down the aisles. It wasn't for Elvis's safety. It was so that people could see the show. He got his own guys for his safety up there.
And you are sitting, there's some pictures of you sitting in front of the stage where you can see
if the policemen didn't, I could tell they weren't going to do their job, I'd have to go down there and help them. But if they were good, I'd just stand over to the side and I didn't have to worry about it. But you saw what I looked like back then, looked like a hippie. Policemen didn't like taking orders from someone that's that young looking like a hippie. They say, yeah, we know. I said, okay, I'm just telling you what's going to happen when that first scarf comes out. And sure enough, after the show, you were right.
Yeah. Another thing is also, we talked a little bit about nobody got a free ticket to go there, but there was also other things that was a little bit special when it came to the backstage area, because today is like the musicians, you know, they have food, they have drinks, they have everything backstage, but it was not like that in those days.
No, not at all. Even the venue manager wasn't allowed backstage. I mean, you could shoot a shotgun off. There was nobody back there. Elvis didn't want to see anybody he didn't know when he came in, just the band. And as far as catering is concerned, it was 6 Coca-Colas, 6 paper cups, and 1 bucket of ice. And sometimes there wasn't any ice. And Elvis didn't even drink the Cokes. You know, he drank his own Mountain Valley water.
So who drank the Cokes?
I have no idea, but I was told to get them every night, and that's what was in there. Big, 6 Cokes compared to the catering for Led Zeppelin. Any day you want them, that's a piece of cake.
Yeah. And another thing I remember you have told me before is that, you know, if James Burton or Glenn D. Harden or some of the other guys in the band wanted something to eat or something to drink, they have to buy it themselves.
At the concession stand out front, that's correct. But don't forget, they had a per diem, so they could eat at the hotels. Now, the band didn't even come over till like maybe 5:30, so they had plenty of time to get it. But no, there was no food at the venue.
Yeah. It was just a place where they were in the short time they
Exactly. It's like-
and what about the band? Did they do any sound check before? Without Elvis?
No.
No sound checks.
Well, don't forget, you had Felton, Bill Porter, and everybody that they knew where to set all the levels anyway.
Yeah.
So there was no reason to. They could do the sound check themselves if they needed to. But they all knew it was cookie cutter every day.
Another thing that was a surprise when you started working with Elvis for Concert West was that the PA systems, first of all, was not what it is today. But another thing is that Elvis didn't have any
Monitors.
Yeah.
When we hired Shoko and Claire Brothers, that was the first time that he had heard himself on stage. Because they didn't have monitors back when he started. If you look at all the things from the 50s, it's just two sure columns out there. There's no monitors. So, boy, when he first heard himself, he loved it,
And it must have been difficult singing without monitors, how to put the level right. And, it's amazing to have been able to do that.
But that's Elvis. Elvis could do anything.
Yeah. And then there's another little funny story you have told before, actually, because Concert West thought, it could be great if we could do a little bit like we do with Led Zeppelin, put up a little bit more lights and blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
and they
my
went
goodness.
to the Colonel. Can you tell us that story?
That story is embarrassing to me. We were in Las Vegas, and of course we did the Led Zeppelin and all the other rock shows, and that's when the moving lights just came out. You know what I'm talking about? The lights that did all that. Shoko invented those. So Tom Hewlett, my boss, said, let's go up and talk to Colonel and see if we can get a light show put together for Elvis. I said, I don't think that's a good idea, Tom. Yeah, it is. Come on. Okay. So we go up to the colonel's office, and we sit down, and Tom starts to say, Colonel, we have Led Zeppelin now, and we have these new lights that move and shine, and it really puts together a good show. Why don't we try to maybe, put those with our show? Well, the Colonel still had his cigar back then, and he took his cigar real slow. How many people are in Led Zeppelin, Mr. Hewlett? Now, when he starts calling you Mr. Hewlett, not Tom or Charlie, it's not too good. Well, there's 6 on the stage, Colonel. Okay. Real slow. Mr. Stone. I'm thinking, I don't want to be here to start with. How many people do we have on stage? How many stars? We have 1, Colonel. Okay. Mr. Stone. I'm thinking, oh, God. How many lights do you put on our star? I said, well, it's either 6 or 8, whatever's in the building, Colonel. Okay. So real slow with the cigar. Mr. Stone, all of a sudden, it's all me. He said, can everybody see our star? I said, well, yes, sir. Okay. Mr. Hewlett, your associate here says everybody can see Elvis. Why do we need more lights? It made sense.
Yeah. Why spend more money on something you don't need, Nice to have and need to have.
no disrespect to the band, but the people are not paying to see Ronnie Tutt, James Burton, sure, that's icing on the cake. They're paying to see Elvis. And if you have 6 Super Troopers on him all the time, you can see him.
Yeah.
You don't need all that other stuff.
He was very good in putting things out so everybody could understand that the Colonel, instead of just saying, no, I don't want that, he just simplified so he knew that,
He makes you feel real stupid.
Yeah, and he knew that Tom Hewitt, he would never come back with any ideas again.
No, it was
That's
over.
not been thought through first.
Case closed. Well, in the beginning, we stacked the sound on the sides of the stage. And we kept trying to tell the Colonel, can we fly it and hang it? I'm not sure he really understood all that. But then Tom says, figure out how many seats are blocked and how much money it is. So I figured that one day, and he told the Colonel, here's how much it costs extra to hang the sound, and here's how many more tickets we can sell. Oh, well, let's do that. Then at that point, everything went up, and every seat in the house became sellable except the ones behind the orchestra.
So he could see the point in that because... Yeah.
It was how much more money we could make.
Amazing.
Versus how much does it cost to extra hang. Because everything, at the end of the day, it is a business.
Yeah.
Expenses do count.
Yeah. And he was a businessman, first of all.
Buddy.
Yeah. And what did you do when you were not on tour? Because there was, of course, times when Elvis was off from tours back in Graceland or wherever he was. Did you spend time with the Colonel then, or did you go somewhere else?
It would depend. If the Colonel had something he was doing and we had 2 tours booked out, I didn't have to go book a tour. I could stay home and I go work the rock shows in between. But if we only had one tour booked, of course the Colonel all of a sudden liked having me around. Number one, he didn't have to pay me, but I'd have to be there. I would fly to either Palm Springs, LA, wherever the Colonel was. We'd sit and we'd put together another show, another tour. And I enjoyed being with the Colonel. I got to tell you, I mean, you got to meet a lot of people you would never meet. He was an interesting character, and I'm blessed to have had his experience as well. But he was one of the smartest managers I've ever known.
Did you also get a chance to meet his first wife, Marie?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah, when I go to Palm Springs, I had to stay at his house. And
so you stayed in the guest room, or? It
was a guest room. But don't forget, there's three channels on the TV, and at 6 o'clock you have dinner, maybe 5:30, and at 7 o'clock you go to bed. Now
he always went early to bed, or?
Oh yeah, and I think, my God. And my wife went with me one time, and she says, the Colonel gets up at 7 o'clock and says, okay, good night. She went to me and said, we're supposed to go to bed. She did, it's 7 o'clock. I said, I know. This is part of the prison you're in out here. But and in the living room, he has his chair, Marie had her chair. And there's one lazy boy rocker over here that nobody's allowed to sit in. We sat on the floor. Linda, my wife, and I sat on the floor watching TV with them.
Okay.
When Joe Esposito and Joni, his wife, came over, we all four sat on the floor watching TV.
And Colonel and his wife were sitting in chairs.
You can't sit in that empty chair because that belongs to Marie's cats.
Okay.
Midnight and Chrissy. That's a cat's chair.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, somebody's got to be filming this somewhere. But after you learn it, you don't worry about it anymore. As stupid as it sounds,
But how was the hospitality in the house?
Oh, it's great, except that she kept the heat up so hot. In the summertime, she'd have it up at 90 degrees, and it's 120 outside.
How come?
Colonel was, he stayed outside because it was cooler.
Yeah, because maybe she just needed the heat, Maybe
I think in the end she was becoming a little, I don't want to use the word senile, but...
she was actually sick for the last 10
she had
years of her life.
She had a brain tumor,
Okay.
And I think it came on slowly.
Yeah.
But, it was so hot in there, and it was 120 outside, and it's 90 inside. She got the heat on 90 rather than cool.
What about her son and their daughter-in-law? The son died also, I think. Yeah. Was that while Colonel still was alive? Or?
Yeah.
That must be...
Yeah, he was in a wheelchair. He was a paraplegic in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
He lived in Tampa.
Yeah, okay. But they still saw him, very often, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Must have been terrible.
He let him do all the advertising and buying the radio stations. And
he
stuff.
worked with that, yeah. Yeah. And then Colonel, actually, after Marie died, he met a new wife who had... Yeah,
Loanne.
He met her was his secretary to begin with?
She was working in Las Vegas at the International.
Okay.
She wasn't Kirk Kerkorian's secretary. She was somebody else's, but involved in the Elvis show, and that's where they met.
So he met her and spent the last time of his life together with her, which was, of course, good for the Colonel.
And I have to tell you, man, she took good care of him.
Yeah.
She took good care of him.
Did you still see him after Elvis died?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
But before we talk about that, let's go back to have Elvis alive. You see him last time in Indiana, and you are preparing the next tour. Do you remember the day, of course, when you got told that Elvis had died?
Well, yeah, we were in Portland, Maine, because we had a show that night. And I'd come in the day before. We put everything up the day before, so we're just waiting. So I was with the Colonel when we got the call. I was on the phone, I'll never forget this, to Hershey, Pennsylvania, booking another date for another tour. And the Colonel says, hang up, Charlie. I said, well, just a minute, I'm booking. He said, hang up now. So I said, I'll call you back. Because you can tell in his voice when you better do something. He said, everybody come in here to the office. I was in the other room of the suite. He said, Elvis has passed away. I said, what? First Joe called, and then Vernon called after that to verify it. And he said, what we have to do is we have to continue taking care of Elvis's business. That's what he would want. So, boy, I mean, as soon as the word got out, my everybody started trying to reach me. What about refunds? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So the colonel says, we got to go to Memphis, and I'll arrange all the services and everything, which he did. And I said, Colonel, I can't go. Well, why not? I said, trust me, these buildings are hollering. And don't forget, we do other business with these people, so I can't just ignore them. I said, I'll just go to Dallas and start handling the refunds. If I can get away and come to Memphis, I will, but I got a feeling I won't be able to. So he said, well, just take care of whatever you have to do. So I flew back to Dallas, and boy, it became a nightmare, because each city and state and county had different regulations and laws we had to go by. I think one city, we had to leave the money there 5 years. So I didn't go to the service, which I don't like funerals anyway, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. But I had to go it took me 2 weeks to sort out and get all the refunds sorted and going.
It must have been a shock for the colonel, of course, and must have been a shock for everybody working with Elvis, because he was 42 years old. Of course, he had some health issues in the last couple of years, or the last many years, but still, again, from there to die.
And nobody saw it coming.
Yeah.
As far as the service is concerned, I mean, everybody talks about Colonel not wearing a suit. He didn't own a suit. And and like everybody says, Elvis wouldn't expect the Colonel to dress anywhere but the Hawaiian shirt and slacks that he wore. That's what Elvis would have expected. He took the heat for that. When Elvis passed, the Colonel told me, he said, in order for the fans to make Elvis a god, they have to make me the devil. And I'm prepared to wear that hat for Elvis. It hurt him when people criticized him, but he never said one bad word about Elvis.
And he defended himself in some interviews also, I think, trying to explain it to people what the situation was. But
and people, some wanted to hear it and some didn't.
Yeah. What did you do, and what did the Colonel do? The Colonel, of course, went on with the business. Did you went on working with the Colonel after Elvis died?
Yeah,
did you,
I want to tell you a real funny story about that. But yeah, I mean, Colonel became a second father to me. Especially after Elvis passed, we just became so close to our family. Man, he never missed a birthday, calling up, playing Happy Birthday on a harmonica or singing to my kids. He was family. And so one time, I had a chance to do the National Dance Company of China, a tour. I did 4 or 5 dates in Dallas, and I said, let's maybe put it in Vegas from Colonel. So I called him up. I said, Colonel, I've got this thing that we can do. You want to try to see if we can do it in Vegas? He said, I'll try to help you. So I guess maybe 2 weeks later, he said, I can't find an opening, can't do it. He said, but I'm sure spent a lot of money on this, trying to help you. I said, well, Colonel, I'll reimburse it. How much did you spend? He said, about $40. I said, excuse me? I said, about $40 worth of long-distance calls. I said, don't worry, I'll cover that. I know he was messing with me, but I spent a lot of money trying to help you here. But he was always on. He was always on. But he still was at the Hilton. The Hilton kept him an office there. I think he was a consultant there for a long time. But I loved being with him. I loved being around him because I always learned something every time I was with him.
Now you mentioned Hilton. There's been a lot about the Colonel and his gambling at Hilton. And that was maybe the reason why he had his own place there, because he spent so much money on the gambling. Did you ever see Colonel gamble?
Sure, I had to gamble with him.
You had to?
Oh, yeah.
So you lost a lot of money, or?
Sometimes he'd win, sometimes he'd lose. But at the same time, I'll be honest with you, and Baron Hilton actually told me this in person. Every week, the Colonel would write a check if he had losses and pay them. There was no discount. There was nothing there that would affect Elvis's performance,
Okay.
The Colonel was just a gambler.
Because that has been something that people have been putting up as critical.
Baron Hilton said that. No, he said the Colonel paid his own debts every week.
Yeah. And some people told that they have been watching him losing a lot of money in 1 hour, without, you could see it on him actually. Have you ever noticed that or seen that by yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. And I've seen him make a lot too, though.
Okay.
You don't always lose, He plays roulette because he covers every number at least once.
Was it roulette that was his favorite game?
That was his game.
Yeah.
So you got 35 numbers plus 2 greens, so that's 37. If let's say the chips are worth $1,000, you got $37,000. You're going to make $35,000 back. So you're not going to lose everything.
No.
Because if you hit one number, it's 35 to 1 odds, you know. But if you have a bunch of chips stacked up, then you're going to make a big lick.
But it's strange and in some way funny that a man who has so much things in control like the Colonel has, he had this little league that he liked to play these games, you know. Was that because he just needed to have no stress, just relax, not doing anything at all, just sitting and gambling and be into that? Because he had this life where he had to be in control of everything, people wanting parts of Elvis and taking care of all these things. Do you think it was his kind of relax?
Well, funny you asked that. I asked him one time, we were gambling. I said, Colonel, can I ask you something? He says, no, but go ahead. I said, you know, you gambling all this, is this all you enjoy doing, whatever? He said, well, let me put it this way, Charlie. What do you enjoy doing? I love to travel. I love to ski. He said, that's fine for you. This is what I personally enjoy. This is my relaxation. I can afford it. I said, enough said. You know, Colonel didn't do sports. I mean, look at him. He didn't do anything else. But this was the only activity that he really loved doing. So you can't fault him for that.
And you only live once, and he didn't have any children who should...
And he said, you know, when I die, they're not going to put all my cash in my coffin with me. He said, I'll make sure Loanne is taken care of. He said, you know, I don't have any family left to leave it to except Loanne. He said, this is the way I enjoy it. You know, you can't fault that.
Did he continue playing until he died? Or
yeah, oh yeah.
He did?
Yeah.
And was he still in good health until the end? Because he became very old. I cannot remember, how old did Colonel become? Did he, was 87 or something?
86 or 7, yeah.
Yeah, high age.
Yeah.
When you think about how he lived his life, you know, because he was round, you know, and all these cigars and...
Oh, he quit smoking for a long time before he died.
Okay, he did.
But he was overweight, and remember, he broke his shoulder, so he couldn't raise one arm up too much, but he wasn't in great health.
No. But anyway, 86 or 87, it's a good high age to reach, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and so much fun to be around. That's the thing, you know. Everybody looks at him as the gruff guy, but he was so much fun.
Were you near when Colonel Tom Parker died, or do you know how he died?
No, I heard it on the news. No, I did not. It was a shock to me, and had no idea.
Yeah. Were you at his funeral?
Yes, I did go to the funeral, and that was hard to get to because it was Super Bowl weekend. And Super Bowl weekend in Las Vegas is big, but I did find a flight, and of course the Hilton made arrangements for us to stay there. But I did go to that, yes.
Yeah. Were there many celebrities coming to that, or was it a private funeral?
It was. There were some celebrities there, not as many as I thought should have been. But Super Bowl weekend, they probably couldn't get there either. You know, I mean, that's one of the biggest weekends of the year in Las Vegas. But it was a sad service because the people that spoke, I didn't speak, loved the Colonel, and you could tell.
Did he continue having time for Elvis's fans through all the years, or was it in the end he catch up with it?
No, he organized fan meetings. I mean, he kept that up to the end, and he was so good to the fans, so good. I was talking to Tony this morning from England. He said he was there once, and the Colonel had a stack of photos, and the fans were lined up. He would sign them and give everybody one. Everybody had one. Didn't charge them. He was very good with the fans, even all the way through.
Were you there when EPE sued Colonel Tom Parker?
No, I wasn't there.
Which was this judge who was taking care of Lisa Marie's inheritance and decided that they had to sue him. Were you there, and how did Colonel feel about getting sued by EPE?
It hurt him deeply, but he also knew that he wasn't guilty. And in the end, he won, you know.
Yeah, they had to go into a compromise with him, I think. Or
yeah,
what did they do?
They had to pay him.
Yeah.
But Priscilla refused to sue him. So the state of Tennessee, whoever the lawyer or whoever it was, on behalf of Lisa Marie, a minor, they could do that. And that was the only way they went after him. And after 2 years, there was not one penny discrepancy. Not one penny discrepancy. And they had to pay the Colonel's attorney's fees and everything because, you know, there wasn't anything there.
Yeah, so he was actually innocent. They
absolutely,
could not,
absolutely.
And after that, they actually decided to pay him a lot of more extra money. EPE did, because they would like to get hold on some of the effects that Elvis had.
Correct.
So he got a lot of money
Right.
from that also. I cannot remember how much it was he got from selling all this out, because that was another part of his nature, was that he was not the kind of guy who threw things away. You know, he always kept things.
He did. He did.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of that, Greg McDonald found the receipt from Nudies for the Golda May. How much do you think it cost back then?
I have no clue.
$1,500.
Okay.
And that's in the 50s.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, actually.
Today, it's, what's that, 150,000 today, maybe?
Yeah.
But, yeah, he found the receipt for it. That's pretty cool.
But it's amazing he saved all these things.
Colonel saved everything.
And Elvis did the same, and because else there could not be all these things at Graceland and other places with the furniture and whatever that they, you know, when he left there it was red, all of the things, and Linda had been decorating a lot of things, and when Priscilla opened Graceland for the public, all the white furnitures went back and all the other things went back. So unless it's not Elvis' things, then it's he must have kept them somewhere. Do you have any knowledge of
Not a clue.
him having a storage or anything like
Not
that
a
for the
clue.
things?
Not a clue.
Because it's impressing all these things still existing.
Yeah. I do know that when we played, last time we played Memphis, he threw a party for everybody afterwards at his house, and it was raining hard. So we all went to the hotel, changed, band on ours, and got on a bus, come back. And it was raining so hard, we got up to the front of the house, and when you go in, you go back to the right, and there's a big room back there with some trophies and stuff. It's changed now. But, and the carpet was white shag carpeting. Now here's everybody with wet, dirty feet tromping through it. And Gercio says, well, don't worry about getting it dirty. He won't have it cleaned. He'll just replace it. And you know, Elvis didn't allow alcohol in Graceland. You knew that.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, he didn't allow alcohol.
And also another thing people don't remember or did not know back then was that he was not a typical rock and roll. Even if he was cool, you know, when he was home at Graceland or if he was at a hotel, he actually just loved sitting and reading books.
Yep, reading books and singing gospel.
Yeah.
In Vegas, he'd make the stamps come up after the last show, which is what, 1 or 2 in the morning, and sing till daylight, sing gospel songs.
Yeah, which was his absolute favorite, of course. But let's move on a little bit. We have already talked about when Elvis died. You had to find out what to do after that. You continue working with the Colonel also, but what did you do when Elvis died? Did you continue working with Concert Wests and doing
I did
shows,
for a short time, but without the bonuses I got from Elvis and everything, I said, wait a minute, you know, my lifestyle was already established. Now this is different, so I quit. I asked for a raise and didn't get it, and said, okay, I quit. And I'm glad I did, because 2 or 3 years later, Concert West was non-existent.
But what happened to Concert West?
They all retired. Everybody made enough money, they quit. But anyway, I decided I got to make a living. So I went out, and when Billy Bob's Texas first opened, I became the entertainment director. Made good money. I did that for 2 or 3 years. Then I became a consultant for British Caledonian Airlines, got to fly all over the world doing videos and just different things. And then I got involved in managing a couple of country music acts. And then after that, fell into the Elvis tribute world and started managing a tribute act. And we've been working 15 years. I've been with that one.
And who is it you are?
His name is Craig Parker.
Yeah.
And we work all over the world. We're doing symphony shows. We do everything. And it's a very respectful tribute to Elvis.
You know, I just think about one thing, a question many might have. You have worked with the real one. How is it to work to somebody who's just a copy of him?
I didn't want to do it.
Okay.
My wife is the one that made me do it.
How come?
She thought the show was so good and quality that I needed it to help them. I said, I don't think about doing that. She said, well, you have to. I said, well, of course, you know, if you're married, you have to do what Mama says. So I arranged a meeting with Craig 2 or 3. I saw him at the Hard Rock. I arranged a meeting another 2 months down the road. I postponed it as long as I could because I don't know I don't know anything about a tribute act. And so I met with him. I said, I'm going to be totally honest with you. My wife has made me do this meeting. It wasn't my idea. She says, I have to try to help you. He looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, all I can do is give you best efforts. So if you want to climb on board, let's do it. And boy, within the first year, we set records at state fairs. We played Vegas, and man, the rest has been a good ride. You know, he works probably over 200 dates a year.
And what do you do with him? Do you work as an agent, selling him into
No, I'm
different
the
places?
manager.
Or you're the manager?
Yeah, we have some agents work, but if they don't do it, I have to do it.
Okay, so you're still like you did in the old days from the beginning, selling into different venues, but you also put up shows yourself where you rent the venue like you did with Elvis? And
Well, not
put up the
anymore. We
shows?
don't have to. In the beginning, we did a few that way because, you know, we weren't working that much. But now, we don't have to because we probably work as much or more than any tribute act in the business.
And you're traveling all over the world?
We do, yeah. And I'm fortunate that I get to pick and choose where I want to go. And I do my own thing, going to Elvis festivals and telling my stories. But I go out with him. If it's a fun place, I go. But if not, I stay home.
And you also worked with the Highwaymen?
The Highwaymen.
Not the original ones, but...
No. The Waylon Willie Johnny Cash tribute. And I love that one. I go with them, not a lot, but some. And that show, they sell out everywhere they work. And I'm loving that one. The reason I'm with that one, their friend Willie, who is Michael Moore, had been on me for, I don't know, a year or two. Said, come, will you help us? Nah, I don't want to do that. So I went to see them one time, and when they played Dallas, and whoa, all this time I've been saying no. And I said, yeah, I'm on board, because they were that good. And we're loving that. They're playing performing arts centers and casinos all over America now.
So that's what you're doing now, traveling around to Elvis conventions, talking to the fans, and then you're taking care of those two acts, having them around the world.
And we just finished my third book.
What is the title of the
It's
book?
called Living in the Elvis World on Tour.
And what is in the book? Is it...
It's 200 photos, by the way, because it took me a long time to round them all up. It's got a picture of everybody that was working in the Elvis tour. Everybody. It took a long time to find them. So everybody's got a picture of themselves in there that worked on the Elvis tour.
And is it anecdotes in the book, or what?
There's anecdotes, and after the caption above every photo is either the name of a song or words from a song that fit what is going on in the photo that my wife put together.
And that's perfect. So you can sell that when you're around signing autographs for all the Elvis fans. Would you ever have imagined that you 43 years soon, very soon, after Elvis passed away, would be traveling around talking about him?
No. If 43 years ago, even if you had come up to me and said, Charles, you're going to be signing photos of you and Elvis, you're going to be getting paid to talk about your times, you're going to be doing this, I'd have bet you my home. You would have owned my home. There's no way in the world. And Sam and I both talk about this all the time.
Sam Thompson, who
Sam
was his
Thompson,
bodyguard, yeah.
that nobody would have ever saw this. Nobody would have ever saw this coming. That would still be going on today.
And it must also be difficult, you know, you have worked with the biggest artists in the world. You work with the biggest manager in the world, Tom Parker, must be one of the top managers ever seen in this world. You know, how do you ever top that?
I don't expect to top it. I'm not going to try because I don't want to fail. But and with the tribute act, for example, with Craig, when I watch the show with the fans, and I'm using the word fans because they are for the tribute acts, these are people that never got to see Elvis. So what they're doing, the tribute acts, not just mine, are giving people a shot at this is what an Elvis show could have been for you. We're not trying to be Elvis. We're not ever going to be Elvis. But these people that never saw Elvis, this is as good as it's going to get for them.
Charles, it has been a great privilege to see you again and have this talk with you about
And
your time.
we'll have to do this on a yearly basis, man. This is fun.
We should. No, it's good stories.
And we can talk about other things other than Elvis, you know, too.
Charles, thank you very much for coming by.
Stig, thank you so much. It's my honor to be here.
Og dermed er nået frem til vejs ende af Welcome to My World i denne her uge. Jeg håber, I alle sammen får lyst til at kigge med igen i næste uge, når vi vender tilbage. Tak fordi I kiggede med.
Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in?